Okay, so I'm out here really late. It's closing in on 10 p.m. It's the 12th of May 2021, and it's my daily update vlog for today. So it's 12 days of Nofap so far, and not much really happened today. I rolled out of bed kind of late. Actually, I was up pretty late, but just continuing my work on the Python boot camp. Not really doing much else. I'm just trying to knock that out, and I'm at, I guess you could say, like it's like there's 182 tasks or like sections or lessons, I guess you could say, and I've gone through 78 of the 182. So I think it's 13 or 14 more, and I'll be at the halfway mark. And it's just kind of pushing on through to that, and I'm trying to just get as many knocked out each day as I can. 5 or 10 or 15 would be nice, but as many as I can. Like yesterday I got 16 knocked out, so I was able to get a lot of stuff done. But yeah, so I'm just trying to burn my way through that, and looking at that list, I'm probably going to go for SQL next, and then R, then C sharp, and then Java. Maybe Java, then C sharp. But as I go on through these things, getting these certifications knocked out, and try not to overwhelm myself with like going and thinking about too many things I gotta get done, too many things I gotta get certified and whatnot. Because then kind of getting a bit overwhelming is sort of that not in a literal sense, but in sort of a mental, emotional sense of like, or a mental sense, psychological sense. You kind of overload yourself by focusing on the huge mountain ahead of you, as opposed to focusing on getting to that next ledge, or that next foothold, or handhold, and sort of or the next hill, that sort of thing. But I think one thing I realized today, maybe it's like a sort of philosophical point, if you will, but I'm looking at this kind of from the perspective of sort of understanding like conventional masculinity, and what makes me tick as a guy, and what would make me not just keep going, but basically be in sort of a decent state of mind. And I've kind of realized that as a guy, you got to keep like working on something or building something. In between some of these lessons, like I'll have a tab open up for YouTube, and a lot of times what I really like to watch is like not just like camping videos, but like there's some guys out there who will and it's probably because in part you got to kind of be financially well off, which for most of those guys they're self-made. They obviously had to like have some sort of day job, and they had to do the work, manage your finances, get out of debt, get enough money together in all likelihood to go, unless they purchase some land out in the country or so. But all those logistics and behind the scenes sort of stuff aside, one of the things I like to watch is like, okay, some dude or a group of guys go out and like they build like a cabin out in the woods, and they clear out some land, or the guy clears out some land, builds a cabin, and he gets the basic cabin up, and then he starts adding things. Okay, he wants to build an area where you can put a stove, or he wants to build some sort of like outdoor oven, or whatever the case may be. Maybe he goes hunting, maybe he goes fishing, and he cooks there, or whatever, things like that. And it's sort of like, and a lot of the videos I watch, I know the guys in a lot of these videos, like obviously like they're married, they have a wife and kids, and it's kind of like, you hear from like a lot of guys out there how impossible it is to be able to do that. And I kind of wonder, okay, like, for one thing, how are those, guys able to do that? How are they able to have that? Are they able to build that? When you hear these sorts of extremes, these two extremes, if either it's impossible to do, or it's only possible if you're willing to sort of debase yourself. But beyond that, I look at it and go like, okay, these guys are out there in the middle of the woods, like on their own, individual guys doing this sort of stuff, and it's like, you know, they're somehow able to find like, you know, maybe I wouldn't say fulfillment, but they're able to find some sort of like goodness and feeling of like accomplishment and purpose and purposefulness in doing that sort of stuff. And like this one guy, he's out there with it, like with his dog, his golden retriever, and he's building a cabin and putting all these new additions in, building like a second floor to the cabin where he eventually ends up sleeping up there, and then he has like a stove down on the first floor, and a sink that you built in, and all this sort of stuff he adds to it. And it's like he doesn't have someone else out there with him, like his wife, or bring along the rest of the family to go and tell him, oh, you're what you're doing is so cool and awesome, and you're so cool and awesome. And he goes and does this stuff, and it's like like it's almost like this manifestation of just not just like mental point of origin, but like he's able to go out there and do that. And I'm sure guy going out there doing that, he probably has thoughts about his wife and his kids in the back of his mind, but somehow being able to do that and build something there, because I mean, let's say best case scenario, and I don't know a lot of these folks, their personal lives beyond like what they're willing to share on these videos, but maybe things have happened, maybe things have changed, maybe I'm seeing an idyllic angle on that, and there's far more going on behind the scenes, and it's not what I think it is. But it's kind of like this whole idea of like see this this whole idea of like you're a man, you go out there and you build something with your hands, literally, like physically, something that didn't exist there before, and you kind of you not only transmute or transform your own energy and time and effort and will into something physical and tangible, but it's something that like you sort of leave behind as your sort of mark on the universe and or on the world. And again, I don't know these guys actual like situations per se, but I just got this sort of sense of like, as a man, you always got to be working on something. You always got to be building something. You could be out in the middle of the woods. Okay, let's go, clear some land. Let's go build a cabin, or let's go build a lean-to or something, let's go make something out of nothing, and finding sort of that fulfillment or that purpose or that, have that positive feedback loop from doing that sort of stuff, And for me right now, that means getting these boot camps knocked out of the way, because he's not only just because of some immediate sort of sense of fulfillment and such, but in a more practical sense, like, having had the experience I had the last workplace, and not only seeing how the world is going, economy-wise, industry-wise, in terms of just basic employment and, finances and, inflation, how much you get paid and all that sort of stuff. It's like, I feel like there's like a real pressure out there. Even if you got like, even if you got like a few to several thousand in the bank, or you got some, significant like money sitting there that you could like, okay, if I budget, if I spend my money wisely, I can stretch this out to 6 months, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, a year. It's sort of like you can't sit on your laurels, you can't rest on your laurels. And maybe some of the way I'm thinking is because I have sort of this historically informed opinion or perspective. I've read enough history. I've listened to enough lectures on, you know, historical trends. And I'm not talking about like crazy conspiracy theories. I'm talking about like analyzing sort of the life cycle of a civilization. And a lot of folks in the West, in particular, given that we take a lot of our heritage from the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, and I can, lineage wise, my dad's side, we have this family history, where we trace our lineage back to, Alexander and his soldiers and the colonists who arrived in his, or moved to his, newly conquered empire and the kingdoms that formed up after that. That's sort of our link back. And there's various histories out there that, provide sort of the path by which, you go back on the lineage or the family tree. And here's where it all links up. And okay, here's how we end up, going back to ancient Greece. And my mom's side, well, I believe a lot of it probably goes back through the French ancestry, back to probably Roman legionnaires, possibly some other branches of the family. But either way, that's me. That's my personal connection. Or I shouldn't say personal connection. That's kind of overemphasizing it. But that's my connection. But you sort of expand out of that, expand out of just focusing on myself and sort of being self-absorbed and going and looking at, okay, like, fellow Westerners, whether they're from the United States, Canada, I'd even include like Latin America, because of the whole Spanish connection, going back to Europe, etc. A lot of us, we drive so much of what we believe in, or our societal norms and the political like sort of structure or framework going back to the Greco-Roman world. And a lot of folks who want to talk about sort of the state of affairs will oftentimes they'll make reference back to the Roman Empire and say, oh, are we the new Rome? Are we going down like Rome went down? That sort of thing. And they try to draw these parallels. And I know I remember seeing or listening to this podcast. I'm trying to remember the name of the channel. It was like the Study of Antiquity or something like that. But it's been sort of a topic of interest for myself for probably the last decade and a half. And it's been something I think that's become more relevant to a lot of folks, at least those who have the means to, be considering this sort of stuff. But there was an episode of that podcast that talked about, like, living through the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And I kind of feel like, and I like to avoid, making too many sort of hard statements, if you will, or like making claims or assertions or whatever. But it feels in many ways like a lot of the stuff that I know about the decline and fall of the Western Roman Empire in particular, or like late antiquity, it's kind of going on in some sense, in the world, in the West in general. And it's one of the things that kind of runs in the back of my mind. I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comparison. I'm not saying it's exactly the same. And I'm willing to, admit that maybe a lot of what I, believe or accept or think may be wrong, may be inaccurate. And maybe a lot of the folks out there who think similar thoughts may be wrong or inaccurate. Maybe we're looking at things from a really almost like insular, almost like self-absorbed perspective, where we have like sort of this blind spot, But given that sort of sense of thinking, it's one of the reasons why like I take so many things so seriously as I do. Like I take the debt situation so seriously. I take the finances, or like getting out of debt, and not only getting out of debt, but actually building up wealth and like buying assets and getting to that kind of point where I'd rather go spend money on that as opposed to just paying for either my debt, meaning continually getting myself into debt and then having to pay for that, or having to pay for somebody else's debt, or be like this plow horse, or the whole beta box deal, where it's like not only making emotionally driven decisions myself that would lead me into really bad financial straits, or facilitating or supporting a system whereby certain other people can continue to make emotionally driven decisions that lead to massive amounts of debt being generated, and so on. Because I see a time coming when and it may take decades, it may take years, it may go faster or slower, it may not even necessarily happen in my lifetime, or if I were to end up having kids or grandkids, it may not even happen in their lifetimes, but I'm of the mindset that a time is coming when it's really going to be, it's not just a matter of the haves and the have-nots, but it's sort of like, if you're in debt, it's not going to be just a matter of like some metaphorical, metaphorical idea, metaphorical perspective that, debt is slavery, where it's like, oh, I had to look at it and going, and I understand a lot of my speech pattern is very much Midwestern in origin, but hopefully I'm able to, be followable in all my rants and ramblings. But anyways, that aside, I have the mindset that, or the understanding that it's no longer going to be in the future. I don't know when exactly, but it's no longer going to be a matter of like looking at debt is slavery, that statement, and going, okay, it means, well, how many hours do I have to work at my job in order to pay for this sort of thing? It's going to be like, far more severe than that. It may mean like sort of a return to the way things were in much of the 19th century, even in America, where, or other countries in the West, it could be Great Britain, could be, I don't know how much it was like that in France or Germany, but at least in more of the Anglo-speaking world, I know that, it's kind of like you had companies that they would build a company town, they'd have a company store, and the workers would end up, because of how much they were making and how much things cost and such, they'd oftentimes have to, start buying stuff from the company store, which eventually meant getting in debt to the company store. And it was almost like you couldn't pack up and leave, you couldn't move someplace else until or unless you paid off all your debt to the company store. And given the times, given again how much you were paid, purchasing power, how much debt was accrued, etc., different factors, how long people tended to live, so on and so forth, like it was very easy for people to get into this sort of lifetime cycle of debt, and then be dying in debt to the company store, and by extension the company, and then like that continuing through their kids and their grandkids, and it would take generations before perhaps that whole situation will sort of collapse or get replaced or so, barring some sort of government intervention, or somebody in the family striking it rich somehow and paying off all those dues, and then being able to go wash their hands of it and be done. And it may become like that. I don't know if it would go to the extreme of, let's say, becoming like the medieval period in Western Europe, where you were literally like bound practically as a slave, as a serf, to the land, and then through the ownership of the land by the landlord, or the local aristocrat, being bound therefore in service to and fealty, whether against your will or not, to that lord, and essentially owned by them. or having to swear yourself in direct fealty to some sort of lord, and an aristocracy, not just de facto but de jure, forming up. I don't know if it's going to be that extreme, but I'm of the mindset that's kind of heading in that direction if it hasn't already been there. And I don't really care to get into some concrete statements about that sort of stuff, and insofar as like, okay, here's who's behind it, or it's the fill in the blank evil faction or whatever. I see it more just a natural process. Um, it's like, again, you study the Western Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire in general. You see sort of that process going on there. You can study other civilizations, both in the East and the West, where you had a similar process. And sort of the hallmarks of, let's say, a rising civilization, rising society, the hallmarks of a stagnating society, the hallmarks of a society or civilization that's in decline or in disintegration or dying or dead, that sort of deal. And I kind of feel like that's what's going on, in this day and age. And it's sort of not, like I said, it's a natural process. There may be groups, individuals. Again, I'm not going to name names, and if anybody tries to take it in a direction and sort of, co-opt this channel into, bringing into that, I'll have to delete comments and that sort of thing, but I hope it doesn't go in that direction. But there may be folks out there who are hastening the process because, they think they can get, fat stacks of cash or land or power or gold, silver, whatever out of it. And there may be folks who are kind of like fighting against the process and trying to slow it down. But either way, like, understanding things from that angle is so much of what makes, debt, paying off debt, getting your finances right, getting your health right if it's not in a good condition, constantly expanding your skill set, constantly, like, working on, let's say, expanding like your social network, moving into social circles where you're around people who they're not the unlucky, the unfortunate, that sort of type. They're not I'm making references to the 40 laws of power, in that law number 10, to avoid the unhappy and the unfortunate. It's like you have to be exercising that sort of stuff and be constantly working on something, constantly building yourself up, building your skill set, getting your finances right, all that kind of stuff. It's a far more serious time than I think maybe some of us have either been led to believe or have wanted to believe, in terms of like the state of affairs in the world. You guys hear some folks walking by. It's middle of the night. It's about a little bit past 10 right now, but anyways, and that's kind of like why I am the way I am, and this is kind of like why if I were to tie this back into Nofap, this is a lot of why I am sticking with Nofap, and I'm approaching 2 weeks, being bounced back after 6 months. Why I take that so much of that stuff seriously, because you have the world going on around you. Things are speeding up. You can look at recent events. You just tune into whatever news source you tune into. Hopefully you look at enough that have a variety of viewpoints, so that you're not getting like a biased take on things. But you look at the world around you, see the things that are happening, the stuff that's speeding up I wouldn't say chaos, but definitely like things are getting kind of shaken up, so to speak. And I'm not making any political comments here. I'm not declaring myself for one faction or another. I'm very much I'm very much apolitical. Um, Not insofar as that I don't have an opinion on things, but like I'm not necessarily sworn to any one faction or group or not or, or another. I'm very much looking at it from the individualist perspective, and with Nofap, with PMO, in a lot of ways, amongst all the other things that it is, it's sedation. And the problem with being sedated or sedating yourself is it's not like the world hits the pause button and things stop happening. It's kind of like your rent will still be due, your bills will still be due for whatever it is that you're paying for, having to have access to, like your car loan, that payment is still going to be due. If you got student loans, I mean, unless they're in forbearance, they're going to be due. And even if they are in forbearance, like unless they continue to extend it or they just get to the point where they decide to forgive them all, eventually they're going to be due. You're still going to have to pay for food and drink and clothing, and if you, God forbid, need health care, you're going to have to pay for that somehow, whether it's through an insurance company, paying your premium or your copay or whatever, or having to pay out of pocket, or if you had to pay like an electric bill, gas bill, water bill, you're going to have to be paying, for all that stuff. And it's like, none of that stuff is going to go away just because you sedated yourself with PMO. You tried to distract yourself from your life and life going on around you. The world is still moving forward and going towards where it's going towards. And like I said, I feel like it's going to get worse. I don't know exactly what that's going to, form it's going to take. But, heck, even if it gets better, still the world's going on. The world is still moving in the direction it's moving at. And, when you go and you sedate yourself with stuff like PMO, I mean, you're not doing anything about the stuff that's headed your way. You're not preparing yourself. You're not strengthening yourself. You're not, putting yourself in a better spot where life will actually be like livable or enjoyable or fulfilling. You're just sitting there almost like in a vat. You could almost like say like whether you want to talk about the manosphere, red pill, or Nofap, there's all of the analogy, the not literally or not literal, but it's sort of like an analogy or an image of like, you think about the Matrix series, and when Neo finally wakes up and he's taken out of that vat that he was in, where he was hooked into the Matrix, and it was like waking up, oh, this is reality. And it's almost like with PMO, you're like literally in this, well, not literally. I gotta be careful with my usage of that word, but it's like metaphorically, you're in this tank or this vat where you're hooked into this electronic system that's feeding you stimuli, making you think that you're having sex and it's with some hot woman or multiple women. You're just kind of scrolling through and looking through and experiencing this, while around you the world is going on, life is going on, bills are still coming due, and all this stuff is happening. Whether you have a job or you don't, or you lost your job or whatever, all this stuff is still going on. And when you're sedating yourself and the world's getting worse or it's getting better, it's changing in some way, there's no way to escape the world. There really isn't. And one of the lies of PMO is that you can't escape it. You can't escape having to do the work. You can't escape having to get your finances and your physique and your health together. You can escape having to learn social skills and how to interact with a woman so that she's actually not just attracted to you, but perhaps even aroused by you, or, to live and act and be in such a way that maybe she even respects you or admires you, etc., etc. Like, you can't escape all that kind of stuff. You can't escape having to build a life and build this and build that and overcome this and overcome that, and be aware of what's really going on in the world, and doing the work to be prepared for it, ready for it, or perhaps even anticipate it. So anyways, That's kind of my state of mind right now. Like I said, it's day 12. I'm gonna head back in. I have a cup of coffee waiting for me. Probably gonna have to go buy some more coffee creamer tomorrow. Got instant coffee, got the water, but probably gonna. I'll try to make that cup, last me the night so that I can go and load up tomorrow. But yeah, so just gonna try and get through all those certs and get on to that next stage, because like I said, stuff is coming down the pipeline of life and reality in the world, and I need to be ready for that. So anyways, gotta head in now. Hopefully, make it back and get on to the coursework again. So I'll see you folks around. Take it easy, and as I struggle and try to do the work to go through this process of metamorphosis into a place in life, a spot in life, a state of being, becoming the kind of man who can make the most of life. I hope the rest of you out there, try and do that with your own lives. So anyways, like I said, I'll see you around. Take it easy. Thanks for watching. Well, don't take it too easy. Keep up the work, and I'll see you folks around. Bye-bye.